Good morning. Good morning on this beautiful Sunday in the middle of summer. I'm Lillian Fifield, your service leader for today, and welcome again to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our speaker this week is J.C. Pratt. Our services are recorded each week, so you can view them anytime on YouTube. Links to all services are in the weekly UmQuest newsletter, where you can click on a link and it will take you right to the service. Now that you are on Zoom viewing either this service via YouTube or participating in our discussions, when you get to YouTube, be sure to hit the red subscribe button or that link, because that will make it much easier for you each week to return to our services. Normally, there's a discussion each week on Zoom following the sermon. However, today, there will not be a discussion specifically after the service about the service. Instead, we are asking all congregation members to join us at 11:45 this morning on Zoom for our annual congregation meeting, starting promptly at 12 noon. Email invitations with the links to the meeting were sent out between Friday and Sunday mornings. If you have not yet used Zoom, between now and the meeting, Google the Zoom free video conference tool and download the free app. You can do this on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. Follow the prompts, and then you can join us for the meeting of members. We thank Michael Wheeler and Lucy Swangham for their work on producing these videos for our services each week. It's also a reminder, it's so important these days to make every effort to stay connected with one another during our physical separation. So please call and check in on members of our congregation. If you know how to find us on YouTube, help others find it if they're having difficulty doing so. That way, as many of us can participate in the services as possible. We begin, as you know, each service with the lighting of our chalice. And this morning, our chalice lighting words are by Dag Hammarskjöld, and they are: each morning we must hold out the chalice of being to receive and give back. Try that for you again. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive and give back.
I wish I could say all the things
Our opening words for this morning are by William Schultz. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. I'm really pleased to share soon the pulpit with our speaker today, J.C. Pratt. J.C. Pratt was born in 1936 in Washington, D.C. She grew up in Seattle, graduated from Smith College in 1957, and with her husband Jim came to Roseburg in 1960. And within that year was introduced to the League of Women Voters and the very fledgling Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. 1960. Soon she was involved with an educational effort that became the Phoenix School of Roseburg. She did the community thing, involved in a lot of boards, including the Roseburg School Board. Today, however, her major interest is truly the maintenance and enrichment of the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. So, joining me now is J.C. Pratt, and we're going to be sharing a reading together.
That's better. Whosoever wishes to know about the world must learn about it in its particular details.
Knowledge is not intelligence.
In searching for the truth, be ready for the unexpected.
Change alone is unchanging.
The same road goes up and down.
The beginning of a circle is also its end.
Not I, but the world says it. All is one.
And yet everything comes in season.
These words were said by Heraclitus of the Euphrates, an ancient wisdom we share this morning.
Entitled, Change Alone is Unchanging. And now we have J.C. Pratt talking to you some more.
Good morning. Again, we are now ready for our three-part meditation, and I'm going to refer back to the words we used when we lit the candle today. And it's just one thought, but I offer you the opportunity of thinking deeply and then more deeply about what it might mean to you personally. The words are these. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of ourselves, of our being, to receive and to give back. I have an interesting opportunity this morning. Someone handed me a copy of words I said from this pulpit in 2001. I read them and thought, oh, come on, there's been more change than that. But I will let you think about that with me as we go along. This one started, peace is better than war. Peace would make some people happier, but others love the battle. There's always a reason to fight. With luck, it's a burning cause. This war we fight for God. This war is to save the homeland. This one is to cleanse the race, to expand the empire, to get the ting and tungsten. We fight because the pay is good, because it's more exciting destroying lives than building them, because war beats work for a living, because everybody else is fighting, because it'll show I'm a man or a woman. Let's change that one now to soldier, because I like to kill. Comment. When one planet makes room for so wide a spectrum of mind, we expect a lot of conflict. Is that all right with you? The UCC Cultural Enrichment Committee and the local board of the AAUW presented that spring a symposium on expressions suppression. John Frohnmeyer spoke about the First Amendment, censorship, and hate speech. Well, he wasn't the first, and obviously he is not the last. I learned a great deal that I had never bothered to understand, especially that any stand against hatred must be taken by personal courage and conviction, because our laws protect the freedom of all to speak. Let me go back over that. Any stand against hatred must be taken by personal courage and conviction, because our laws protect the freedom of all to speak, and there may not be agreement. The First Amendment is the basis of our evolution as a system of government. It allows for the statement of the minority point of view. That may lead to change, an integral part of evolution. I'll give you just a moment to think about what's happened in the last month, 6 weeks. Right. So the First Amendment, which denies to government or anyone else the power to control or the ability to quiet any voice, is that element of our system which allows change to remain inevitable? The complexity of the forces of change is one of the marvels of our current age. The speedy pace of change and the directions in which change race to affect all things, from ways of doing, to ways of speaking, to ways of envisioning, to ways of being, to ways of thinking, have left many people overwhelmed and grasping for footholds in the flow, uncertain of a secure or familiar place with the changing disorder. I think the difference between now and then is the pace is up, folks. It's about as fast as we can see it coming. This aspect of the process usually leads to chaos. Where have we heard that before? It seems to me we were instructed last year sometime about the value of chaos in sort of spring cleaning what you believe and what you think is important. So even a smidgen of change usually seems a death threat to egos and the status quo, which respond in fear, vulnerability, panic, defensiveness, at least confusion. This is really where we are now. We are watching things change and watching people react and jockeying for position in their own futures. For instance, can you imagine being a political campaign director for presidential candidates reacting to the current considerations about getting rid of then it was the Electoral College. We're not even talking about that except vaguely, but we sure didn't get at it, folks, because the Electoral College is still there 20 years later. So you see, change is slower than you think. A whole new ballgame, they say. They consider the reactions of the religious field when asked to consider the God is dead philosophy. Do you remember that? It seems I was very young when that came up. Or even the idea that human beings were intended to think for themselves and ask questions and learn from their experiences of the past to make different choices. Or that love is not the only thing that makes a marriage whole. Or that there is more to reality than can be seen, heard, touched, tasted, or smelled. There's something other than our senses. Well, we know that for sure now. Ta-da! Enter censorship, striding forth to protect, to maintain sanctity and stability, to ban degradation, to establish order, and to stop the rising chaos by banning evil. Well, too much freedom is too much for humankind to handle, censorship says. Human beings are weak of spirit and in need of protection from the excesses of temptations of freedom. The excesses and temptations of freedom? The judgments behind all this arise in fear and easily separate people into factions. Well, I got that part right. These factions often believe that their way of truth is threatened, and they become impassioned in their own defense. If I had my mask in my hand, I would raise it right now, and you would know that even at that level, the passions of people's defense is hard to believe. The judgments behind all this arise in fear and easily separate people into factions. These factions often believe that their whole way of truth is threatened, and they become impassioned in their own defense. This is the energy that becomes hatred. When what you believe is challenged and you don't know what the next step would be, you grab for what's familiar and for what you believe. This is part of chaos. This is the normal part of chaos. Hatred powers up rationales of superiority and rights and righteousness. Hate is about power. Censorship is about overpowering, banning, burning, stifling, and punishing people, items, and issues in the attempt to gain or maintain power. So hate is really a distraction for a power grab. Try thinking of today in those terms for a while and see where that takes you. Okay. For one thing, let's question the dualism that we believe in. All right, dualism, two things. That means it's an either-or philosophy. It's either good or evil. It's either right or wrong. That's petty timing. How would a respect for both and look? The concept of being part of oneness opens your mind even more. But there is no duality. It's bigger than that. There are more than two ways. So it is important to look at hatred and bigotry from many angles in order to clarify the sort of power play that it makes. The need to ban this or that implies the belief that human behavior is determined by outside forces, by others' intentions, ideas, and actions, that as someone else's power is enhanced, mine will be diminished. They see submission to the institutional will as best for everyone. Freedom to be divergent is dangerous. Remember the fun of freedom? The lure of freedom? It suggests there might be a new way to believe, and that is really threatening to people's whose whole sense of self and rightness is based in a belief system. And remember, the power of belief is that it's not provable. So, if you're going to challenge the things you believe, you have to do it yourself. Okay. Now, further, what is the difference between victims' circumstance, trapped in lives they didn't ask for, and the masters of choice, leading lives they can change at will? Got that close in mind? People whose lives they cannot determine for themselves, and others who can. The answer: victims are helpless. Masters aren't. That's the power aspect of what we call hatred. My life spans a tremendous changes in what is considered realistic behavior. I was brought up in the old way, doing what is expected by tradition, and I taught my children and myself a new way of inner awareness, personal responsibility, and deep democracy. My childhood did prepare me for living with the paradox. World War II. Germans were my forefathers. Germans were the Nazis. Japanese were respected neighbors. Japs were the enemy. Criticism at home and judgment at school. Being smart pleases teachers. Being smart causes teasing by peers. There was safety in silence. Then TV brought the 60s into our lives daily. Racism and justice, Selma and Martin Luther King, bigotry and the courage of protest, consciousness-raising groups, women's liberation, ancient injustices were being exposed. Exposed? As if we didn't know they were there. All it took to expose them was courage. And they were exposed and presented as issues to be solved. Then nonviolence and the New Age were met with fear. What did that mean, nonviolence? Well, it means you have to give up a whole lot of violent words and deal with the world with what's left. It's an interesting proposition. The natural reaction to moving closer to a new truth. Old ways die hard, but questions move towards an envisioned enlightenment. Running from safety brings us to risky, extreme ventures, socially, spiritually, sportingly, pushing the envelope, getting out of the box. Holding to security seems to be holding back. What I know may be the greatest barrier to what I might learn. Stepping outside my own box began with George Leonard, who stepped outside his box as a professional in the world of magazines into Aikido. I went to a weekend workshop of experiencing energy, and my mind opened to most of what I now consider valuable to know. So I left that Frohmeyer's talk on hate speech. I know that we were talking about, but my inner knowing about the power of hatred had not found a place in the legal structure of our freedom. There is no wisdom about what to do about what hatred leaves in its wake. Ta-da! That brings us up to today, right? That's where we are. What is the wisdom about what hatred leaves in its wake? Sticks and stones, names will never hurt me. I hummed, knowing that to be totally untrue. Sticks and stones will break bones, but names will break my heart. I know the emotion that arises me like a fist, looking for something to slam. I realize that loose ends from my childhood experiences still lay about waiting to get tangled in the fear and defensiveness when faced with hatred, rejection, disrespect, and other injustices. I realize that if the terrorism of hatred is to be deterred, individuals must find the courage to relate to it personally, like the King of Denmark, who wore the yellow star in the face of the Nazi threat to the Danish Jews, like the townspeople who all lit menorahs in their windows when the synagogue in town was defaced. So that is my interest and challenge today: how to respond to acts of hatred from a place of awareness and consciousness. To be really specific about the mask thing, besides whatever my shaking finger teacher wanted to say to the non-maskers, I've learned that all I can really say is, my blessing is that no one you love dies. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, it is said, and that's my experience. Bach turns it around for your consideration. Every real teacher is myself in disguise. Many insights and influences surround us with wisdom these days. Buddhism and other Eastern spiritual disciplines, psychological insights about why we do the things we do, the debunking of should and ought as guidelines. I remember feeling that about my baby daughter, who is now 60 years old. So that one is a long time one we've been working with. The acknowledgement of I statements as the true language of choice. When you're in conversation, are you getting and giving I statements, or are you hearing they say, it is, the truth is, da-da-da-da? If it doesn't start with I. It may not be true. There's an awareness of the victim stance. If I'm not responsible, I have no choice. Acknowledging feelings as acceptable, accessible too. I feel happy when you tell me this story, or I feel frightened when you yell that way, or I don't like what I think when I hear you say that. Those are legitimate. They're about me, and the other person cannot challenge me. Vast amounts of new knowledge about how the brain functions, and especially the parts and the importance of the different brainwave patterns. They come more than I can even control, but it's amazing how much you know a little bit. It does help you understand why you think and act more like you do. Reality as defined by my choices, really. It's a good thing to know that, because it's what's working, and it's a better access on what's real than if you think you're doing something you were taught. Let's see. The paradox of independence and interdependence, finding balance in the flow between significance and insignificance. Those are nice big words. I love them. The paradox of independence and interdependence. So yeah, we're trying to change our acceptance of Black and other brown lives matter, and we are being asked to realize that our interdependence requires masks and staying at home. Can we do those two things at one time? We are being charged with doing that. A reevaluation in the role of the heart in decision-making. That one is so old and so long that it's hard to imagine it. But a lot of it looks like women and men are beginning to allege that their feelings are important. All of these move the responsibility of actions off the shoulders of political and spiritual authorities and into our own spheres of influence. We are challenged to know ourselves as capable of all varieties of good and evil, and we are connected in all that we know with, and all of that with others. Haven't we all thought about the context in which we actually could kill someone? Have we not changed some aspect of lifestyle in honoring our responsibilities to the planet? I don't know, where do you recycle plastic? I would love to know. This little story, which you'll be familiar with, will help. An old grandfather whose grandson came to him with anger at a schoolmate who had done him an injustice said, "Let me tell you a story. I too have felt a great hate for those who have taken so much with no sorrow for what they do. But hate wears you down and does not hurt the enemy. It's like taking poison and hoping someone else will die." I have struggled with these feelings many times. It is as if there are two wolves living inside of me. One is good and does no harm. He lives in harmony with all around him and does not take offense when no offense is intended. That's a big one. He will only fight when it is right to do so and in the right way. But the other wolf, he is full of anger. The littlest thing will set him into a fit of temper. He fights everyone, all the time, for no reason. He cannot think because his anger and hate are so great. It is hard to live with these two wolves inside of me, for both of them try to dominate my spirit. The boy looked intently into his grandfather's eyes and asked, "Which one wins, grandfather?" The grandfather solemnly said, "The one I feed." It's a simple thing that comes back to the I statements. What do you do to open your being as a chalice, to receive and to give? It's our way of thinking, of feeling, of believing in this church. Alan Watts taught that the most strongly enforced of all but taboos is the taboo against knowing who or what you really are behind the mask of your apparently separate, independent, and isolated ego. He was a time when we needed that information. I think we know it now, and when someone is not making sense, we give that possibility a look. Is this a mask I'm used to seeing in this person? And would I be happier to know his heart? Another challenging concept that frees me of unrecognized biases is that what I like and dislike in others reflects what I like and dislike about myself. My ego is a strong savior, always defending itself in the guise of me. But usually it is a censor, threatened by the new, unable to see itself in a new light. That is my personal work now. Because I have the grace of the decade of the 80s. I need to use it. I want to use it to make sure I have done what my soul came here to do.
Wow. J.C. Pratt. How many years? I don't even remember what I was thinking that many years ago, let alone could they possibly be that profound. I feel very, 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 very given to, with so much to think about, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm most grateful that that sermon is coming in the mail to me and that I have it in my hands and I can think about it some more. I believe we're going to have an opportunity to perhaps do a Zoom discussion with J.C. Pratt at a later date and talk about so many of the things that she touched upon. For now, we come to our closing words and near the end of our service. Before we close, just a quick reminder that we will have our congregational meeting at 12 noon. Please check in on Zoom using the information given to you if you are a member at 11:45. And for closing our service today, I leave you with these words by Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Thank you.